In today's video, we're talking volume recommendations. Welcome to the video, guys. My name is Tyler, also known as the Fit Chemist, and I help people take control of their lives by taking control of their fitness and nutrition habits so that ultimately we can lead healthier and happier lives. So if you're new here, welcome. Please consider subscribing. Turn those notification bells on so you don't miss when I post new videos. And if you are returning, welcome back. I am so glad that you are here. In today's video, I wanted to highlight a new paper published in 2021 by Yada and coworkers in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research. As always, whenever I'm doing a video on a paper, I will link it down in the description box below. This one is open access, so you should be able to go ahead and read it yourself, but I'm going to summarize some of the key findings for you and see what we can take away from this paper. Quick side note, I was kind of wondering when scripting this video if anyone would be interested in me putting together a video on how to become scientifically literate. So, what are credible sources? How do you find those sources? How do you navigate through these different databases? How do you read the research and interpret the research and all that good sort of stuff? So if that's something you're interested in, let me know in the comments down below and maybe I'll put something together. But before we dive into this paper, I first want to remind everybody what volume is when it comes to working out. Volume can be defined in two ways. So one way is the typical way in which we do the load times sets times reps, which gives us the total amount of weight lifted. Or to simplify things, sometimes people will just reduce it down to the number of sets per muscle group per week. I wanted to remind everyone because in this paper they are concerned with volume and they will be using the first definition of volume, in which it is load times sets times reps to get the total amount of weight lifted. The goal of this study was to determine skeletal muscle adaptation, so both strength and hypertrophy, in response to a volume equated resistance training program with divergent repetition strategies. All of that is a bunch of fancy jargon for saying they wanted to see if varying rep schemes made a difference on strength and hypertrophy outcomes. So it's 2021. Why are the authors interested in a paper like this? Isn't there a general consensus on rep schemes already? Well, the authors do note that there are previous studies looking at this type of data. However, some of the results in the past have been inconclusive. Some studies have demonstrated that a higher load and a lower rep range are better for strength, and that a higher rep range and a lower load are better for hypertrophy, which I'd say is typically the general consensus. However, there's been at least one study that identified similar strength gains in the 4 to 6 rep range as a 15 to 20 rep range, which is typically thought of for hypertrophy. One limitation of the previous studies is that they actually measured the muscle cross-sectional area and the muscle thickness at one particular point, and the authors of the current paper point out that the muscle does not always grow equally in terms of hypertrophy across the entire length of the muscle. So it's possible that in these previous studies they just measured the one specific point that actually grew more than the other points of the muscle, which could give some misleading results. One thing that the current authors wanted to do was address this issue, and we'll see in a minute here that they actually do so by using MRI, or magnetic resonance imaging, and that's actually going to allow them to measure the total amount of muscle consumed, not just one specific point on the muscle. So let's take a look at the study design. They took 42 young men, so aged 19 to 24, and they split them up into 4 different groups. Well, since it was 42, they technically had one group of 12, but we'll just say it's 4 groups of 10. The authors note that the subjects in this study were physically active. However, they had not participated in any sort of organized training program for the year prior leading up to this study, which is a big point. So again, I want to reiterate that they are using untrained individuals in this study, which are more likely to have a larger response than someone who is already trained. Another point that they make was that the participants of this study were just instructed to continue their current nutrition intake, so both food and fluid, which I personally think is a big caveat of this study, because if you're going to go through the time of doing this actual study over the 10-week period and you're not controlling protein or calories, I feel like that could kind of skew the results. One group could unintentionally be eating more protein than the other, and I do feel like that's something you should probably control for. So one group in this study was actually a control group and they didn't do any sort of lifting at all, and then the other 3 groups did lifting for 10 weeks and they were lifting 2 times per week on bench press. The first 3 weeks of this study, they were actually teaching the participants that were lifting how to properly bench press, and then from weeks 4 to 10 is when they actually split them into the 3 different groups. Among those groups, they had one group training at 90% of their 1 rep max, and they were doing doing 4 reps for sets of 7. Another group was training at 80% of their 1 rep max and they were doing 8 reps for 4 sets. And then the last group was doing 70% of their 1 rep max and they were doing 12 reps for 3 sets. All of these groups were resting for 3 minutes between all of their sets, and they did note that if they were able to hit the prescribed weight, then the following week that they would increase the weight by 5 pounds. If we take a look at figure 2 here, we can actually see that across all 3 groups that volume was in fact equated, which is a big part of the study. And then they measured the results of this study by doing MRI, which again is magnetic resonance imaging. So I actually put up a screenshot of a before and after example photo so you can actually see the entire muscle growing, which I think is pretty cool. But not only did they look at this to measure the total volume of that muscle mass, but they're also looking at their 1 rep max for the bench press both before and after the study. We'll get into the study results in just 1 second, but my question of the day for you guys is, are you currently tracking your workout volume? If so, how are you doing it? And if not, why not? Let me know in the comments down below. But with that, let's get back into it. At the end of the study, when they did the MRI, they found that all 3 groups had pretty significant increases in muscle mass and that there was no significant differences between the 3 groups. So the group that was training at 90% of their 1 rep max saw an 11.2% increase in muscle mass in their pec. The group that was training at 80% of their 1 rep max saw a 10.2% increase in muscle mass, and then the group that was training at 70% of their 1 rep max saw an 11.4% increase in muscle mass. So all of those values are pretty similar across the groups. However, they did note that there were pretty significant differences when it comes to the 1 rep max of the bench press. The group that was training at 90% of their 1 rep max saw a 28.5% increase in their 1 rep max. The group that was training at 80% of their 1 rep max saw a 29.6% increase of their 1 rep max, but then the group that was training at 70% of their 1 rep max, so this is the group that was doing 12 reps per set, they only saw an 18.8% increase in their 1 rep max. So there's a couple conclusions that we can take away from this study, one of them being that muscle hypertrophy or increasing your muscle size is not dependent on the rep ranges. However, it is dependent on the total amount of volume, because we saw that all 3 groups had pretty similar increases in terms of muscle mass. We can also see that training at 80% of your 1 rep max is necessary to optimize or increase your 1 rep max in whatever exercise you're doing. So in this case, they were doing the bench press, because the group that was training at 70% of their 1 rep max did not see as large of an increase when it comes to the 1 rep max as the group that was training at 80% or 90%. However, the authors do note that if you were to choose that first option, so 7 sets of 4 and you're resting 3 minutes between each of those, that's going to be a pretty timely workout because you're resting for 21 minutes alone, and that's just going to be for 1 exercise. They also note that if you do choose to go with the higher load option, so you're doing 90% of your 1 rep max and you're going to do 7 sets of 4, that most likely is going to be quite taxing on your body as compared to the other one. So it does seem like training at 80% of your 1 rep max for a sort of moderate load, moderate rep range is going to be that sweet spot in terms of increasing both strength and hypertrophy. Hopefully after watching this video, I have convinced you that it is extremely important to be tracking your workouts to hit both your strength and hypertrophy goal. I do want to mention that I have an entire tutorial video on how to use my favorite app when it comes to this, so I'll put the thumbnail over here and link it somewhere up here. It's called the Strong Workout Tracker, and I absolutely love this app, so I'll link that video down in the description box as well. And if you want to start tracking but you don't necessarily have a workout plan that you are following and you would like a custom workout program for yourself, I do offer that. So you can go to my website, it's linked down below, click on the services tab, and then go ahead and fill out the program design form, and we can get you set up with a custom workout plan. I also want to say that if you're one of those do-it-yourselfers, which I totally get because I'm that way too, I put together an entire series for someone like you on how to design a training program, so that will be linked down in the description box below. Go ahead and check it out after watching this one. Alright guys, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments down below. And again, if you are new here, be sure to subscribe. Turn those notification bells on because I post new videos every single Friday and you do not want to miss when they go live. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.